The US government shut down for the first time in 7 years. Senators have failed to agree a funding package, so hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are deemed non-essential. Sorry if that's one of you, that seems a slightly insulting way to be treated, but they're likely to be furloughed or laid off. Someone who is still working is Politico's trade reporter Ari Hawkins from DC. Ari, good morning. Thank you for staying up for us.
Thank you for having me.
So just explain for our listeners, when Republicans control both houses of Congress and control the White House, how do you get to this point?
Well, the funding process in Washington is really one of the few areas that demands a level of bipartisanship. Right now, lawmakers failed to make this version of the package through the Senate because that requires 60 votes. Republicans have a majority, but not that sweeping of one, meaning that they are effectively forced to compromise with Democrats. Right now, some of those dividing lines with the Democrats on one side are pushing for an extension of certain subsidies to bring down insurance premiums in relation to health care, as well as certain extensions for grants for small businesses. And on the other side is Republicans, some of which are pushing for a clean extension, so rejecting Democratic demands and then moving forward, while other Republicans are pushing for more aggressive provisions, including on immigration at once. So while you have this sort of need to compromise, you also have divisions within the Republican Party, which is also slowing down this process.
So you're going to have these federal workers laid off. Some in Britain might be hoping, are the customs staff going to be among them? And are the tariffs going to be levied a bit or lightened a bit? As our favourite trade reporter, Ari, can we sneak in some cars and steel while this shutdown happens?
Well, thank you for that, but you might not like the answer because the Trump administration has facilitated this process of layoffs to make it so that certain agencies that are most chiefly responsible for those negotiations are not as affected. Firstly, the Customs and Border Protection Agency, which is the agency that collects tariff revenue, will still continue to function. They made that clear more than a week ago at this point, and that was one of the first agencies to do so. At the same time, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, which facilitates and helps Trump navigate certain trade negotiations, will also continue to have their entire staff employed during this period. That's a pretty significant pivot, actually, from recent years where about 40 to 60% of those employees were expected to be furloughed. But this time around, the Trump administration is clearly emphasizing trade, even amid this government shutdown.
Will there be any tariff functions that are affected?
So the broad functioning of the federal government will slow down. There's less employees in each and every department, from ones that review national security investigations that are looking into tariffs to people that are pursuing broader Section 301 investigations. So in terms of the day-to-day, that kind of grinds to a halt. There's much less people for logistical aspects of negotiations that will slow the process down. But in broad strokes, tariffs are still being collected and the broad trade strategy from the Trump administration is still being pursued.
Just to veer slightly off your beat, Ari, I suppose from a British perspective, the other thing is tourists. If someone's flying into the US over the next couple of days, will they notice a difference?
They likely will. Part of the batch of what is considered non-essential federal workers that are put on furloughed include people that are handling the airports, are people that facilitate certain resources to help with visas and passports. All of those facilities that a lot of people rely on in the UK and in the US are grinding to a halt for now. Now, those agencies aren't fully shutting down. There will still be workers there, but in terms of wait times and people that help that process get along a little faster, all of that will be grinding to a halt.
And I suppose the question on everyone's lips, is there a clear path forward? Is this going to be a 3-day shutdown like we've had under Trump before, or is it going to be a 35-day shutdown like we've had under Trump before?
It's a really good question. And this time around, Democrats are keenly aware of the fact that compared to if we flash back to the last time there was a government shutdown, also during the Trump administration, this time over disagreement among funding the border wall specifically, we saw that eventually Republican lawmakers did sort of realize that the general public started to skew against them. They began to blame Republican lawmakers because it was a similar situation with Republican lawmakers in power working towards that end goal. They really were the ones that were getting the blame after a long period of time. And there's a sense that that is going to likely happen again. That means that Democrats don't necessarily have as much of an incentive to make sweeping concessions. Republicans still need Democratic votes, but without that dynamic there, with Democrats knowing that Republicans ultimately will be blamed for that, it's going to be a difficult path forward for the leadership in the Senate.
I think it's that blame game, isn't it? And I suppose what the public feel about it, we'll have to see over the coming days. Ari Hawkins, thank you so much for explaining to us so clearly how it affects us even across an ocean. That's Ari Hawkins, who's Politico's trade reporter in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are only hours away from a government shutdown, and the Democrats have a very clear binary choice. They can choose to keep the government open by voting for a short-term, nonpartisan, clean, continuing resolution, 24 pages long, or they can vote to shut the government down. That's what we're looking at. And if the government shuts down, it is on the Senate Democrats. The House has acted, the President's ready to sign the bill, and all that's left is for 8 Democrats to join us in passing that bill today. And if they decide to vote it down tonight, they're going to be the ones that have to explain at midnight tonight why the government is shut down.
Democrats do not want a shutdown. We stand ready to work with Republicans to find a bipartisan compromise, and the ball's in their court. Finally, after months of asking, months, and mounting pressure, Leader Jeffries and I went to the White House yesterday to meet with the President and Republican leaders to find a way forward. And sitting in the room, it was very clear, behind closed doors, that the President hasn't fully grasped the magnitude of the disaster he's causing Americans. As costs continue to skyrocket for Americans, thanks to Trump's tariffs, economic policies, clean energy policies, and disastrous blunders, Americans are prepared to spend 114% more on their health insurance. That's right, that just came out. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation's analysis today, without ACA premium tax credits, premiums will double, more than double on average. And this not only affects those on ACA, it affects just about every American family with health insurance. Republicans know perfectly well that undocumented immigrants are already prohibited, as I said, from getting insurance on ACA, Medicare, or Medicaid. They know perfectly well not a single sentence or clause or comma that we're pushing in our bill does that. But they're lying because they know they're screwed if this debate turns into one about health care. And guess what? That's just what we are doing. His video was dumb. It was childish. It was petty. It's something that a 5-year-old would do, not a president of the United States, but it shows how unserious they are. They don't give a damn about the harm they will cause with their shutdown. Yes.
The president is now threatening these irreversible cuts to the workforce, to programs. Is that a risk that Democrats are willing to take?
The bottom line is he's doing it anyway. They've already cut 300,000 people. Whether there's a shutdown or not, it'll be up to Trump whether he's going to let Musk, formerly Doge, vote, do these cuts, do these layoffs, and do these firings. It will fall on him, as I said. He's the one doing the firings, not Democrats. And that's what it shows. Yes.